This talk is about a particular proposal that I'm thinking about for innovating in the world of electronic reading, ebooks. But this is not really limited to ebooks. It can be also used with probably education courses, specialized material, documentation, technical documentation, and so on. But I did start this work with, from ebooks, and it's still, to some extent, ebook-centered. And this talk is less technical than many of the talks here. It's really a vision of user interface and how text can be split into small parts that can be related. About me, I used to be a researcher at Sun Labs a long time ago, and I worked on something called conceptual indexing, which would be really NLP stuff. Then I also wrote an XML search engine, which was used in IntelliJ IDEA and OpenOffice for many years. And later I moved to XML Center at Sun and wrote the first XSLT to Java bytecodes compiler, which has become what is known as Zeylan compiled. And now I'm working for myself and licensing some of the XSLT software, and also working on Android applications and experimenting with e-reading. So what I'm going to be talking about today is, how electronic books function in the 21st century. And by electronic books, I mean I'm specifically interested in the so-called STM books, or scientific, technical, and medical. But it can be also cookbooks, travel books, and so on. So books which have a nature of a reference, much more so than immersive prose, such as novels. I'm not talking about novels. And the specific proposal that I will have is, I would like to introduce a notion of tiles, which is to some extent inspired by Pinterest. Tiles instead of pages. This is a very small move, but with deep consequences. So, and I have worked for quite a while with O'Reilly on their books in various ways. What was that? Jeez. Clearly postpone. And when I was learning computer science and programming languages, I did it mostly from books. But these days, people learn a lot from online free resources. And in particular, I couldn't find it for this conference, but somebody asked a query on Quora, how should I learn web design? And there were the top voted answer listed 8 different sources, but not even one of these sources was an actual book. The person was sending readers to online resources such as StackOverflow, GitHub, and other places, but not books. So this is of interest also to. Okay. So books are in some sense embattled or by free online resources, and publishers find it more and more difficult to sell books, even though this is a curated high-quality content, right? So what I'm trying to do is to remove the competition and rather make books collaborate with free resources rather than compete and lose the battle in the end. So in this century, the synergies between books and web content remain untapped. So, for instance, for any almost content in O'Reilly technical books, there is some discussion on StackOverflow, but there is no connection. Or books which discuss code, such as Learning Spark or Scala, have corresponding repositories in GitHub, but they are not connected to these books. So, and code might change independently of the book. Book can become stale in the process. My first experience with an ebook reader was something I called eCarrel, and this is a large system for, in fact, O'Reilly book readers written for Android. And in that e-reader, which has not been particularly successful, I have been experimenting with integrating, in particular, GitHub code with pages mentioning that code. So that was my kind of pioneering experience, which also taught me how extremely difficult it is to do good pagination. And this topic will come back, but pagination really, which can be done via tricks with CSS, is extremely brittle. And I spent an enormous time just trying to get pagination right with varied results. Similar efforts in the sense of trying to integrate information from the outside of the book into the book are, for instance, Google Books, Kindle to some extent, and there is a company in New York City called Cytia, which also has a bunch of interesting ideas. So this is an example from Kindle, I believe, which I guess must be doing some form of named entity recognition, because when you highlight like a word in Microsoft, it brings two additional windows, which in this case bring back Wikipedia and then a potential translation. However, these additional windows, the Wikipedia and translation, are like from different domain. They are outside of the book, not inside of the book. So if you wanted to bookmark something or highlight something brought into this context, you cannot. That's another example where both dictionary and Wikipedia is invoked by Kindle. So this is to say that electronic books do innovate, right? And they do bring some progress compared with paper books, because, for instance, dictionaries can be integrated into e-readers. But I think this is not enough. This is another example from, in this case, Google Books, not Kindle, where something similar happens. So it knows about Shakespeare and can link it to, in this case, WordNet, and provide some information about the person. But again, this little pane which appears does not belong to the universe of the e-reader. This is all hinting towards the solution that I'm getting towards, where such information can be integrated into a scrapbook, so to speak, of both content from a book and content coming from the outside. Since this is Google and Google has Google Maps, then they also have quite an attractive integration of book content and maps. And you can go to maps. And here on this little pane, you also see a link to Wikipedia. But when we click it, we go to a particular link which opens in this case, Google Chrome, again moving us away from the reader. So you cannot bookmark it, you cannot highlight it. It's a dynamic connection, but it's not within your universe of documents that you're working with. So speaking of pagination, I mean, pagination is clearly a legacy inherited from paper books, and it has some goodies. For instance, everybody is familiar with pagination, and it can be used for reference. Something was found on page 54, and also it gives you a sense like where are you in a book. So these are the pluses, of course, but the problems with pagination on electronic devices have to do with the fact that screens differ enormously in sizes, resolutions. You can display text in portrait or landscape modes. So the automatic rendering produces suboptimal results. Tables can be cut. This is something that a human editor would not allow when laying out content on paper. And also, when I'm talking about geometry benefits, many people have visual memory and would remember, for instance, that such and such content was on the left-hand side somewhere up on the page. But this position really depends very much on like the size of font. I mean, if you increase the font, the number of pages increases, everything is repositioned completely. So this is an example where this, you'll get used to it in time, is moved completely to a different position when the text is displayed in a bigger font. And this is an example again of a book which I bought. I think it could have been Kindle, but again, if you are changing fonts, then some tables get cut right. It's not nicely laid out. So pagination runs into problems. And I have been also inspired by this guy Peter Myers, an innovative thinker in the area of electronic reading. And like everybody has been clamoring for innovation in the ebook space, but it hasn't been all that much innovation really happening. Because I mean, ebooks are still very much continuing in the legacy of paper books. But this book published by O'Reilly was like Peter trying to various ideas. And he himself is working for CITIA, I believe he's still there, which is a startup in New York City, which is trying to reimagine electronic readings. So what CITIA is doing is similar to what I'm proposing with tiles, but they have a notion of the so-called cards, which for whatever reason are square, always square. I don't know exactly why, but maybe square when it's rotated it remains a square. But books have to be specifically edited for this format, and I believe that their cards are still an arbitrary unit of content, which is still much more related to display properties than semantic properties of text. So you can take a look at CITIA and see what it means. So currently, when you are reading in pages, this is really linear reading. That is, if you are on a particular page, there is only one next, and this is next to the right. So it's one linear. But on an electronic screen, you can have something above the page or below the page, and these spaces are conceptually not utilized, right? So in addition to having something next, you can have, I'm thinking, maybe related material above, maybe user annotations below, but there is definitely a potential of 2D reading, or even probably even more dimensional reading, but let's not complicate things just now. So the proposal, my proposal in TopicStream is to introduce the so-called tiles a la Pinterest and forget pages altogether. Rather divide content into meaningful chunks which correspond to subsections of books with much more self-contained aboutness, and completely forget the notion of paging with their inherent problems of rendering. And another reason to do that would be to introduce the integration of content from a book. And you can think also about documentation of some products and whatever, with content coming from outside of the book. So tiles, like I said, are about some particular topic or set of topics, but are not arbitrary as pages or these cards in CITIA are. They are much more natural to relate among one another, and they may also be easier to read in the sense of like shorter attention spans right? People may want to say, oh, I've read it, I know what it is. So I was thinking also in terms of bringing the French revolutionary ideals here of fraternité, liberté, égalité, or trying to liberate content from the one-dimensional sequence. So like I said before, in paging, there can be only one next, but when we liberate content from one-dimensionality, there can be several different nexts. Next in the sense of the spine order of a book, but there can be other nexts going to complementary material. Yes. There's another aspect of this liberté here, namely the fact, which is not yet implemented in Google Books or Kindle, that you can navigate to another book without explicitly closing the current book and opening another book, right? Because what you are really browsing is a graph of tile rather than individual sequences of pages. So the liberté here is illustrated by like two different streams. So these could be two different books. And there is a possibility of nonlinear reading if, in particular, the fourth tile is somehow related to the first, then you will have two nexts. You can navigate to the next in the book order or to something related which can be later in the book. The égalité is also extremely important here. That is, all the tiles are like created equal. That is, even if they come from completely different sources, they are treated by the platform identically. So all of them are searchable, all can be bookmarked, all can be highlighted in the same way. So in this case, we say that the tiles which are surrounded by this curve are all treated the same. They have some IDs in the system, and no matter what their provenance, where they are coming from, they are treated identically, from the point of view of, for instance, searching. So this is an example of how the prototype, which is an Android application, looks like on a tablet, and I couldn't figure it out how to show you a live demo connecting this tablet to a computer. That's why I took a bunch of screenshots instead. So this shows you how a tile looks like, and in the left upper corner there is an icon suggesting StackOverflow in this case, and this is a book which is synthesized from StackOverflow, and on the right upper corner, there are icons representing books or other resources, are the tile sets, which are found by the system to be relevant. And not just relevant, but really helpful. And there's this V thing is an affordance, which shows that there is something about the page, that you can kind of slide it down to see related material to the tile currently displayed. So this is an example of a tile which is filled with code from GitHub. So I have software which can create ebooks out of GitHub repositories, also ebooks from StackOverflow, and kind of it would be an obvious extension to do ebooks containing, Wikipedia articles and so on. And as we go from tile to tile, this right upper corner related material changes dynamically at all times, right? So, for instance, here we have 3 different resources which are deemed relevant to the tile currently being read. And the fraternité aspect is really saying that the tiles can form a graph. That is, that we can have additional edges between tiles treated as nodes of the graph. And the rest of the TopicStream platform is really about edge discovery. That is, which edges are really going to be helpful. And this helpful notion is very important because, for instance, Facebook has introduced some time ago related stories. So you may have a story about something and related stories. But I find these related stories very often repetitive, like the same story told by different newspapers. And typically I wouldn't waste time to go there, but it would be really nice if these things were not just related, but in some sense either a contrasted view or some explanation of, but complementary and really helpful. Right. So I described this already, and this fraternity here also tells you that you can switch from tiles from book to another book very easily, like I said, without explicit opening and closing. So Google Books introduced something called the skim mode, which at some point scared me that they have done the same thing. This is this skimming mode. So if you tap on a page, it can provide something which looks like tiles, but what it really is kind of zoomed out view on which you can see pages to the left and to the right and relatively quickly browse through a succession of pages to find the one that you are more interested in, and then you can zoom in onto this page. But even though they do look like tiles a little bit, they are still pages with kind of arbitrary assignment of content to visual units that pages are. So this is also how this prototype looks like. You can have a bunch of books. Some of these books can be synthesized, like I said, from other resources. So not the actual published books, but books, quasi-books built from GitHub, StackOverflow, Wikipedia, and so on. When we go into a book like this, a pretty standard table of contents is displayed. But when you go inside, what you see is a tile, so not a paginated system. And again, the related tiles are seen on the right upper corner. When we slide down this related material, which in this case is code, on the left corner right now, because this panel moved down, you see something like a breadcrumb, which says that we are in this book to the left, but we have ventured into a different tile. And likewise, you can go and browse other related material. And as we go from tile to tile, like I said, whatever is related is computed dynamically. Well, it's not computed dynamic, it sits in a database, so it was computed dynamic somewhere on a server, downloaded into the application, so the application now knows the edges between tiles. And this is an example of a search engine which is also running in this Android application locally. So in this case, I'm entering something called application permission maybe, but with stars representing the rest of the words. And this will be the first result, which is you see what was matched in the various books. But when you click it by a particular book, like the first book, we also see in which chapters it matched, and you can go into a slide, not slide, but a tile where matching words have been found. And all the tiles are indexed independent of their source. I'm using a lot of EPUB all around, or I don't know if you know what EPUB is, but it's a kind of a popular standard for electronic publications, electronic books. which is basically a zip of HTML, CSS, and the usual things in a in a standardized way. Okay, so I do have a software component which can take a regular book and tile it, and then put it back into another EPUB, but now everything has been divided into small chunks. And then in addition, I can put also the content in XML binary format and also components of the search engine. So there's quite a lot of technology involved here that I'm not going to be talking about today. But basically that's what I was just saying. And this remains to be a problem. That is how to really find which tiles to consider as being helpful and complementary and relevant. And I have started an implementation using Apache Spark. And thank you to Marek Kołodziej here, who helped me think through the process of how to use Spark's RDDs to, match ebook concepts and tiles into this process of finding related tiles. But of course, this process is not finished yet. So I'm hoping at this conference even to speak to some of you about the NLP techniques that could be used to actually discover edges. I suspect that I will also need specialized tokenizers for the different domains. For instance, if we are working with code, such as GitHub code, I might want to look for classes and see, like Java classes, Scala classes, and see whether the same entities are mentioned in text. Maybe use this named entity recognition here for relating tiles. So this is not yet really done. But it's a very interesting problem, and in particular when books are split into tiles, there is quite a bit of information available, the metadata about a tile, such as its title and also its ancestry, right? That is, a tile might be a subsection of a section that has a title, and which is a part of a chapter which has its own title. So there is a whole ancestry path of titles. And in particular, I have a book about Corsica, and very often there are sections entitled, for instance, where to stay, where to eat, etc. But it is important to know, for instance, whether this where to stay is in a chapter about Bastia or Ajaccio, right? Because this parent title really determines like what is the aboutness underneath. And also the content of the tile will also be a source of features to be used in matching tiles. But I'm not so much interested in clustering tiles, but rather for each individual tile finding what should be shown to users to be really most helpful. So this I guess I just described. And future work is also, I'm thinking about a server which can be an edge server, or a server which can generate whatever is related and give us information that can be downloaded into the app about what is related. And like I said, this was really intended to work with scientific, technical, and medical books, but can be used with, for instance, product documentation. And I have actually filed a provisional patent on some of the ideas here, and I would like to make more people interested in collaborating on this subject. So that's pretty much it that I had to say. I do have a demo running on Android, both my smartphone and tablet, which I can show you. And that's it. Do you have any questions? All right. Well, thank you very much.